The term systemic racism or structural racism or institutional racism is a relatively new term for many of us. So before we go further, it's important to just consider, what does this concept mean? There's lots of definitions out there. For me, I like the way the National Post described this in June of last year, saying that the idea of systemic racism is not about individual attitudes. It's about how a society works. Good people can participate in systemic racism.
Housing has a big impact on the sustainability of a family and a community. For any community to be sustainable, they need three things: institutional relationships like CMHC and the banks, growing small businesses, and access to home ownership. So in a time like this, to be involved with BlackNorth allows me to amplify the work that I've been doing the last 10 years, which is trying to make changes, systemic changes within the housing system.
Employment, education, and housing are the three most important pillars where new programs and ideas are necessary to create a more equal society. And the opportunity to use my expertise was a natural way for me to help. But I'll just add one other point, that when we all get involved and work together to address these issues and to create and level the playing field, to help create equal opportunities for everyone, particularly in the housing field, the more prosperous and vibrant and healthy our overall society becomes. And that is in everybody's self-interest.
Systemic racism has an inherent unconscious mechanism of feeding itself and feeding discrimination, because those individuals, once marginalized through those three critical pillars that Steve talked about, when they got put into the system, the mortgage and underwriting system, they always come out unqualified on the other side. And hence we have this growing segregation of our neighborhoods that most Canadians abhor. And I can say that with a lot of confidence, because I go, but we don't seem to know how to fix it. And that's because it's systemic. And that's why we've put together this forum as BNI, to try and get all these good people and all these highly qualified professionals to attack this problem, because it's not us.
Homeownership allowed me to get higher education. Homeownership allowed me to start my business 15 years ago. And through that business has now gone into those communities that I first lived at Jane and Finch and Margrove and Albion, to provide financial literacy, to try and break down those areas that Steve mentioned, those systemic areas that are impacting the Black community. Because without access to housing, there's a ripple effect of access to employment, access to loans, access to leveraging it to be able to go to higher education, access to start a business.